Welcome to Sacred Realms. It's a great day in Hyrule, y'all. Welcome to Sacred Realms, a Zelda Retrospective Podcast for the final time in Season 10 of this show. I'm your host, Lyndon Willoughby. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Matt Willoughby. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Lyndon.
Are you ready to do a rank and recap?
I am. I'm a little bit distracted by the Grey's Anatomy that your wife is watching that I can see through the giant windows, but I will do my best to keep my attention focused. Look, the drama and the medical mystery, it's just too much. It's captivating.
This is dangerous for you, Matt. You're gonna watch this right now, and before you know it, you're gonna be 12 seasons in.
Oh my gosh, it happens in the blink of an eye.
Is this season like 28 at this point?
I mean, I think it is. I think they're at least on 28. But yeah, it's look, I'm gonna have to shield my eyes from the medical drama that is Grey's Anatomy.
You should focus your attention instead on pod drama.
Are we gonna have pod drama this time?
I don't know.
Only if one of the planes flies overhead, crashes into the house, and then you have a severed leg. And if I try and pull you out, then Lyndon gets decapitated by a wing.
Oh, that sounds very Grey's Anatomy.
That's so Grey's
That
Anatomy.
is
That's
super
very
Grey's Anatomy.
Not Grey's Anatomy at all, but something that might actually happen. If the plane flies overhead with the message trailing behind it that Stephanie rented to fly over the house while this episode is being recorded.
Where she's begging us to put Twilight Princess at number 1.
It says, Twilight Princess, goat for life. Heart Stephanie.
Yeah,
If Stephanie did that, I'm going straight to the top with Twilight.
Honestly, if she rented a plane and she knew where you lived and she was able to time it to the time of this recording, which we haven't told anybody, she would deserve it.
That would be an extra slot for Twilight Princess, I think. But I would want to have a follow-up conversation with Stephanie to clear up a few points.
Yeah, seriously, that sounds like doxing, and that's kind of illegal. So let's not do that. Stephanie, we're not accusing you of doxing. We love you very much. We hope you have enjoyed this season and all the many shout-outs that you've gotten. Well deserved.
And if you want to rent a plane, then you go for it. So anyway, it is a rank and recap episode. We are here to figure out where Twilight Princess goes amongst a list of its peers. Here to help us do that is the guy who almost always helps us do that. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike the Detective.
Happy to almost always be that guy.
Almost always. You know, one of these days we're going to make you play Zelda 1 and Zelda 2.
No.
He played Zelda 1.
I did. I played Zelda 1.
Okay.
And then you said Zelda 2, and I said absolutely not.
Well, look, I don't blame you necessarily, but
How about this? Whenever we get around to Spirit Tracks, you have the option of either actually doing Spirit Tracks with us and being on that episode, or you can defer and play Zelda 2. And then Matt and I will be ranking and reviewing Spirit Tracks for that whole episode, and you will be in parallel ranking and reviewing Zelda 2.
Sure.
that sounds like a lot of fun,
This plan is flawless and nothing could go wrong.
That sounds like a hella chaotic episode.
I'm down for that. I feel like we could stand to shake it up a little bit more often than we really do. That's a conversation for another day. Mike, we are happy to have you back. Matt, Mike, we've all beaten a game recently.
Yeah, we did. I assume so anyway.
Yeah, definitely beat this game.
Cool, good. Yes. Glad we did that.
Yep, the Wii U is back at my house. So if you didn't beat it, then I've got questions. But yeah, you know what? These are always a ton of fun, and I will say that I'm going into this episode having not decided up front exactly where I'm putting Twilight Princess, not because I have like strong feelings about it necessarily, but I'm just going to kind of let the spirit lead on this one and see where I get to.
Fly by the seat of your pants. You never do that.
Yeah, no, never at all. But yeah, and then you know what? Next week we're going to be firing up a new season of the show. That's going to be an equally good time. Mike, are you excited to be able to play our next game in the comfort of your own bed?
I am beyond excited, Lyndon, because A, I don't have to blow into any orifices on my game system. B, it's mostly A.
B is mostly A.
Yeah, we were having a smoke and a drink the other day, Matt, and I told him that in Spirit Tracks he would actually have to sing into the 3DS. So
that's going to be real fun for you at night.
You know, but I think my wife would honestly rather me sing into my system
Then just blow
than
on
it. Like a madman. And she looks over at me like I've lost it. And she's kind of contemplating, like, do I go ahead and get the gun? And so far I've dodged that, but it's coming.
Mike's wife just
She definitely grabbed the taser at one point and contemplated it.
be like, you know what? He's beyond saving. There's no coming back from this. It's better for all of us if I put him out of his misery.
We'll just put him out to pasture.
Which is, I'm sure, how at least one secret air marshal was feeling when I did that same thing on an airplane. That guy was like looking at me sideways for sure. He's just like, all right.
Like, I know this guy's not a terrorist, but something is definitely wrong with
this
him.
guy's sitting right behind Lennon, like brow sweating, like, finally it's happening.
Narrator voice, it wasn't. Sorry, Air Marshal. Anyway, gonna be a super, super fun conversation, and I think I'm gonna go ahead and shepherd the course of the pod to just get us straight into it. Let's do the housekeeping and then get right into our discussion of The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. How's that sound?
Let's do it.
You know, one thing we have to do before housekeeping, Matt.
Whiskey bit.
Whiskey bit.
And if you don't like it, you can fast forward.
30 seconds or maybe more.
Exactly. So the whiskey bit tonight is generously supplied by me. I actually got this in Breckenridge, Colorado. I went on a trip with some friends over the summer. For those of you who are longtime listeners may remember when I was on sabbatical for a week. And we went to the Breckenridge Distillery that is up there. And they have a fantastic selection of whiskeys. This one is the double barrel aged, which means that it is a whiskey that has been aged at least 3 years in charred oak barrels and then finished in a second oak barrel. So it gives it a nice double oaked flavor, sweet, kind of bitter if it's not done right, but this one's done very right. So it's very good. It's a high rye mash build, so it's a little bit spicy on top of it. Because of the water that they use in Colorado, it's high mineral content. It has a very distinctive flavor. So very excited for you guys to get to try this.
Is it a skunky flavor?
No, not at all.
Okay.
No, it's not that kind of mineral, Lyndon.
Cheers.
Cheers indeed, gentlemen.
Ooh, spicy.
It's nice and sweet from the oak, but the high rye comes through at the end.
Oh, I definitely taste the high rye.
Yeah.
That's good.
Very good.
Yeah. Apropos nothing specific except for the fact that we're actually drinking whiskey. Check out True Vanguard's latest whiskey video. One of his favorite daily sippers is the Wild Turkey Rare Breed that we've been enjoying
Rare
for
Breed's
so long.
so good.
Yeah.
Also love True Vanguard. He's a real gent.
Real nice guy. All right, y'all. If you didn't know, Sacred Realms is a weekly re-examination of The Legend of Zelda, one little slice at a time. Sacred Realms drops every Wednesday and is available on all major podcast networks. Every week, we play a new section of a Zelda game, then we sit down here to talk and to drop our hot takes. If that sounds fun to you, please head over to Apple Podcasts, hit that subscribe button, and be sure to leave us a review. 5-star reviews are very greatly appreciated, and they have a chance to get a shout out here on the show. If you want more Sacred Realms in your life, you can head over to patreon.com/Sacred Realms Pod and get access to listener mail, vote on what game we play next, bonus episodes, and much more. In addition, one of the benefits that Master Sword patrons and above get is that we read their names every week here on the show. Those legendary individuals are Brandon, Shriequill, Joseph, Nintendo, Adam, Sakura, Sky, Art, Jeremy, Dante 2, Tom, Andy, Stephanie, Billy, Connor, Rachel, Shepherd Street, Matthew, Chris, Daniel, Fallout 907, Kelso, Chris, Tiffany the Star, Daxel, Patrice, Stephanie, Darknuck, Il Maestro himself, Brian, George, Mike, Dylan, Lennon, Kolhu, Aiden, Rowan, Josh, Nick, Gep, Brittany, Davey, Haru, the Mighty, Derek, Albert, Mark, Andy, Cameron, Daniel, Nick D, _TV, Hyrule Interviews, aka Maximum Nichols, Garrett, and Drew. These are the most legendary of individuals. And you know what, Matt? I would sit down for a group play session of Twilight Princess with any one of them.
Well, yeah, I mean, who wouldn't do that? That sounds fun.
Yeah. And in no way dangerous the way that a lot of these normally are. I do have to say.
Sure, no way dangerous. Yep.
I'd rather do the dangerous ones.
Which uber dangerous activity that we undergo in Twilight Princess, Mike, would you be willing to take on with our Master Sword and Big Goron Sword patrons?
I think the most exciting would be going into the big black stone through the mirror thing. Let's do that one with them.
You would go straight to the Nega universe.
Yeah, I mean, what could go wrong?
A lot.
Yeah, but if I go through and I get a like bamfed up sword, it's just going to be a party.
It gets all glowy.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Oh, what if I went through and my Glock turned into like a super light Glock? Just shooting sunbeams?
You turn it into the gun that shoots the UV ammunition from Underworld. It's got the glowy bullets.
That would be pretty cool.
That would be pretty
You
cool.
know, I've not run into a vampire yet, but I got to save my silver bullets for if I ever run into a werewolf for sure.
For sure.
All right, y'all. Let's get into the Sacred Realms recap and get out of conversations about werewolf hunting. The Sacred Realms recap is the thing that we do one time per season at the end of the season, except for that one time when we did it twice, in which we discuss the game we just got finished playing, and then at the very end, we rank it against all the other games that we played in the series so far.
Look, Lyndon, all of our rules have one exception at least, so it's only fitting.
I prefer rules with at least one, possibly two exceptions.
Amen. Like speed limits. I said that while looking at Detective Mike square in the face, just to get a reaction, just so everyone is aware. Sorry. All right, enough of the sideways commentary, Lyndon. Please continue.
The ranking as it currently stands is as follows.
Did you forget to pull it up again?
No, I have it up. Sorry. So in the same document, I've got the entire series with little X's next to the ones that we've played, right? And then under that is the ranking, and then under that is the final dungeon ranking.
Oh.
And then under that is the password to the Zelda Universe YouTube channel, which I won't be sharing here.
Sounds like you need to get a separate document.
Nah, I like it this way.
Okay.
The ranking as it currently stands is at number 10, Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. Number 9 is Phantom Hourglass. Number 8 is The Legend of Zelda. Number 7 is The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past. Number 6 is A Link Between Worlds. Number 5 is Link's Awakening. Number 4 is The Wind Waker. Number 3 is Skyward Sword. Number 2 is Ocarina of Time. And number 1 is Breath of the Wild. Matt made a little noise while I was reading that list, and I was assuming that you were having, like our once per season at this point now, regret about having placed A Link to the Past below A Link Between Worlds.
Yes, that's exactly what I was having. Yes.
Cool. Just so everyone was aware that happened.
I mean, it's standard at this point, so yeah, we just move along.
All right, let's get into part 1 of the Sacred Realms recap, which is our discussion about the plot and the story that is being told in Twilight Princess. Mike, I'm going to throw it to you first. I would love some general impressions from you about the story of Twilight Princess and how, maybe how you feel it stacks up against some of the other games that we've played so far. And we're just going to let this spin out a bit and see where it goes.
Sure. So I know we talked a little bit about the history and everything with it last time, but I felt like I was playing this game pretty fresh. It's been so long since I played it the first time. I had very little recall on this game. I think it's a game that has a very front-loaded and impactful story. I really love the whole the premise for Link leaving his home. All feels very organic and natural. His desire to go out and save his friends is a really relatable draw to get him kind of out of his zone and start him on this quest. So I really appreciate that. But as you go, this game kind of tends to peter out for me as far as the emotional load and kind of the overworld load. I was talking to Lyndon the last smoke day, and Matt, I'm picturing it like those challenges that pop up on like Facebook, where you've got like 7 points, right?
Okay.
And there's a tier of 5-point characters, like a tier of 3-point and a tier of 1 point. And you got to like make your little group.
Yeah.
So they have like 5 points invested in Midna, and then we're like, what do we do with the other 2 points?
One for everybody else.
I mean, exactly. So, I mean, they capitalized on her really well. I don't dislike this rendition of Zelda. You just don't see her very much.
Which is pretty standard.
And then Ilia kind of becomes that silent, like almost Zelda-esque figure where she's kind of there and she's emotional for you, and then you kind of don't do anything else with her for most of the game. So she kind of got that treatment. And I would have loved to have seen more like Tallow, Mallow, and Colin. Like after the first act, they're on hiatus for the whole rest of the thing, except for Mallow Mart.
Which is really funny.
Which, yeah, I mean, you get a chuckle out of every time, but I would have liked to see more of that. The dungeons were strong throughout. I was a big fan of the dungeons in this game, especially after having played a couple games that I would say were
meh.
Meh is the right word for dungeons for me. They didn't capitalize on the White Lotus at all until I'm sure y'all talked about it in that episode. I have not watched the final episode yet, but where they show up.
That's because it hasn't gone live yet.
Well, that makes sense. But you're there solving this like really very normal for Link fight, right? Like Link's like, okay, I got this. Oh no, the White Lotus shows up to get you two boblins or bulblins, two bulblins and like a cockorock, and you're like, thanks, great guys.
Yeah,
I just fought two Darknucks, and you're over here.
Yeah, where was your bazooka with my two Darknucks? Come on, man.
I know. So there are things in the game that I thought they could have maybe capitalized on a lot more. I don't know enough about game design like Max does to know kind of why they had to do some of these things, if they were intentional or just kind of what ended up having to happen to complete the game. Another meme I'm going to draw. So everyone's seen like the Game of Thrones one where it's the horse in the background and it starts off real strong,
really well drawn horse,
well
seasons
illustrated
1
horse,
through 5, yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's this
stick
Kill
figure,
me!
stick figure into a like blob of nothingness.
And
towards the end,
to me, that's this game with some caveats. I think it is real. I mean, the hindquarters of this horse look amazing. Like it's a thoroughbred. It's
someone with pure artistic talent.
It's just galloping. It's
beautiful.
You know, it's going to Gandalf the Grey to be his horse.
Absolutely. It's Shadowfax.
Shadowfax. Why did I
almost said Shadowmere because I've been playing Skyrim, and that's totally wrong.
A little different. So no, it's Shadowfax for the first.
That is one of the mirrors, unless my eyes are cheated by some spell.
This is Shadowfax, the lord of all horses. He has been my friend through many dangers. I'm glad we had that.
So we have Shadowfax's butt. And then
through probably midsection.
Yeah, and then we maybe have like Epona's like tummy.
Yeah.
And then we have some horse that got like dropped on the head at birth for most of the last part of this game.
Yeah.
And then right at the very end, the horse's snout kind of looks nice. Like, you know, like it's got a good nostril or two.
One nostril is good. The other one's not good.
Yes. Yeah. And so that's where I'm at with this game kind of as a whole. Some really high highs, some kind of low or mad lows. But I enjoyed it throughout.
Sure.
Yeah. You know, I think that I feel the same way as you about a lot of these things. I think the story of Twilight Princess is one that I actually, on paper, really appreciate. And I think at times throughout, you know, your time with this game, it's actually a story that's told pretty well, that has some stakes that you're actually fairly invested in. So, Mike, you were mentioning a lot about how front-loaded the emotional impact is of a lot of these things. And that's definitely true. I feel like the setup is really solid, right? There's a lot of things that happen, especially in those first 2 episodes, that kind of tell you exactly, you know, like this thing that's happening to the land of Hyrule, getting covered in Twilight. It makes you feel a sense of urgency about that just by virtue of the time that it spends with those early characters. And that's really great. And then the thing is, like, if you just write the plot of this game down as a series of bullet points, then I think it actually continues being a very strong storyline for a game for basically the entire duration. It's just in the execution where I start to really have some nits to pick with it, which is really unfortunate, because a lot of times it's kind of the other way around in Zelda games, right? A lot of times we get very strong execution and like fun moments and all that sort of thing, but the story itself can be a little bit more bare bones, right? I think we have a few extra layers of storytelling here, which is really nice. Matt, how about you? What do you think of the story of Twilight Princess just generally?
Yeah, I agree for the most part. I think I'm a little harsher on it than the two of you towards the end. Like, I really feel like
you're more harsh than dropped on its head at birth.
Well,
like
Mike said that he had some redeeming moments towards the end there.
I'm fond of horses, and you know, it's okay. I said it with a smile.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think that the back eighth of this game, kind of starting with the Sky Temple, Sky City, is not great. It's not great, and it's not great to downright bad from a plot standpoint. Like it it has so many moments, and we talked a lot about this with Josh last week. So, Mike, I know you haven't heard that one, but we talked a lot about like how much there is just plot holes and gaps in logic and leaps in logic, and Ganondorf is just shoehorned in there, and Zant gets totally eviscerated, and like none of it really tracks from a world building story perspective. It's like the whole story kind of falls apart at the end, and to me that just killed so much of the stuff that was built up, partially because everything was built up from an emotional impetus standpoint at the beginning, and then you went such a long time with nothing, and then they try to bring it back at the end, but they shoehorned it in with Ganondorf and bring Zelda back somehow, and Ilya is kind of there, and you regain her memory, but at that point you haven't like talked to her in 30 hours of game, and like it just all kind of feels like it's fumbling its way towards the finish line, and it really killed the momentum in the story for me.
Yeah, so the way that I think about this is, imagine in Skyward Sword. I mean, in Skyward Sword, I feel like that game's story actually continues building momentum all the way up until the very end, right?
Yeah, agreed.
And there's a huge sense of importance on the things that you're doing all the way through the end of that game, whether it be your quest to rescue Zelda and learning gradually more and more about what's going on with her during the events of the story as you're playing them, learning more about Girahim and what his goal is, and then coming all the way to the climactic fight, which is very much like I need to go save the world right now fight, and that's exactly what it feels like, right? Mm-hmm. With a little bit of Triforce shenanigans thrown in there. So Twilight Princess to me is like to draw a line between those two games, it's like if we had actually gotten the emotional resolution of having rescued Zelda halfway through the game.
Yeah.
And then just like kind of coasted for the remainder of it up until the Demise fight, right?
But not even coasted, tried to shift gears to a different, like, hey, Demise is, or more accurately, look, Demise is shoehorned in at the end, much like Girahim, except for the fact that Girahim...
Much like... Wait. Demise is shoehorned at the end, much like Ganondorf.
Yes, thank you. Sorry. And then Girahim is treated much like Zant was, right? But we talked last week with Cody about how Girahim and Zant have two kind of opposite story arcs, where Girahim is kind of weird and flamboyant, and then at the end he's like intimidating and cool and badass, and Zant is the exact opposite. And when you do it the opposite way, it doesn't really work for me.
No, it really whiffed with me on this way. I really liked the whole Girahim dynamic, where you kind of think, man, this guy's kind of a goofball. Like, how worried am I about him? And as it builds throughout the game, and you fight him several times throughout the game,
and he gets harder each time,
harder and harder.
Yeah.
And at the end, you're like, man, like this is that. That's one of the
this dude's bad.
I'm going to use the R word. That was a rad fight. And so I'm glad you enjoyed that.
God.
The fight with Zant was notably not rad.
Yes.
I actually didn't mind his fight very much. Like I kind of liked, I listened to the deal with Cody, and I kind of liked that he takes you to all the different zones where you fought previous bosses. I did think that some of them might, like, I know you hate the butt slapping monkey, but
yes,
some of them were a little goofy, but I liked that there were changed up mechanics, like in Morpheals, where he's like in that and you've got to pull him out.
Yeah.
You're still using the same item, but he's kind of Zanted it up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
When he goes like full childish
tantrum throwing.
Yeah. Oh man, I lost it. I'm like, this is the worst.
Yes.
I won't say that very often about a game, just saying like I hated a part.
Mm-hmm.
I hated that part.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think like it all boils down to, it feels like we're stumbling across the finish line and we're shoehorning in a bunch of things to try to make it feel like Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
And like we talked a lot about how much Twilight Princess is homaging and sometimes straight up copying Ocarina of Time, and Nintendo's attempt to recapture that after the backlash of Wind Waker. It's documented that Twilight Princess is kind of a response to the backlash that Wind Waker got. And I really just think that they tried to force that so much that it really hurt the game. And it's really evident in the story towards the end.
Can I throw in a headcanon real quick?
Absolutely.
So in my head, the writer for the villain in this game was like, Zant is my boy. I'm going to make the coolest villain to date for the Zelda universe. And he's going in there making this sweet helmet. He spent 2 weeks on this helmet in my head. Like he's sitting there drawing it. Like he's getting more and more abstract. It's like seeing it in his dreams. And he's like, this is the cursed helmet.
He's haunted by the helmet.
Haunted by the helmet. Exactly. The sound that Zant makes when he like walks in places.
So creepy.
He's like, man, I've got to have this.
Yes.
And so he does all this work. And then like a couple months before launch, he goes and they're showing everything off. Someone higher up in the food chain is like, it's got to be Ganondorf.
Because we're trying to do Ocarina of Time, but better, so it's got to be Ganondorf.
So make Ganondorf come back. And this guy just rolls his eyes and is like, F me, dude.
Yep.
And so someone else comes in real quick and rewrites like the last eighth of this game and rewrites the end of the Zant fight. And after the guy who originally wrote Zant figures this out, he just goes and beats the heck out of this person in the street.
Is an old style Yakuza beatdown since we're in Japan?
Someone's missing a finger on their pinky, the whole thing.
Yeah. Gotcha.
I like your headcanon, Mike. Beautiful. It's a little bit more metatextual than I think our headcanon normally is, but
very metatextual.
But I dig it. It's great. You know, it has me thinking about how could the story of this game have been rearranged to give us more emotional payoff in the back half. Let's assume for a second that we continue, like in this pie in the sky version of Twilight Princess, we allow the game to have the same structure it does now, where the issue of trying to save the children of Ordon is mostly tied up at the halfway point.
Yep.
Right. And so we've dealt with that early emotional investment. But in the back half, you know, what do you have to fill that void that wasn't there in the actual version of the game? And I think the answer is, as we come to learn more about Midna and we come to learn more about the backstory of the Twilight, and we're searching for the pieces of the Mirror of Twilight so that we can get into the Twilight Realm and fight Zant, I think that's the point in the game where we really needed to start caring more about Midna's people and about the Twilight Realm. And that's not something that really happened at all. Like we weren't faced with any any stakes for any of that element of the story until very slightly when we actually got to the Palace of Twilight and we rescued like 4 of her people.
Yeah.
But like,
but they get no characterization whatsoever.
Yeah. My thing is, okay, so we've mostly saved Hyrule from the Twilight by the time we've beaten Lakebed Temple, right? Now that that's the case, obviously we've got this issue of Hyrule Castle is besieged in that giant prism, right? And so we need to figure out something to do with that. But I really just think we need to get more of a feeling of Midna's realm being in imminent danger, and that's something that wasn't done at all, and I feel like that's a really big miss, because the thing is that as good of a character as Midna is, and as much as she has some great cutscenes and some great explorations of why she's doing what she's doing, there could have been so many extra layers there, right? There could have been so much more investment in, I guess, showing the failure that Midna is trying to overcome throughout the entire course of this game. The fact that her people are in danger and that we are able to do something about it. Because that's what happens anyway, right? It's just not built up at all.
Yeah, and I mean, you really could have kept the same structure too. You just replace it, without Ganondorf being the bad guy, you just replace the boss fight that was Zant with somebody else, like Zant's puppet or Zant's chancellor or something. And then you just do the Zant fight, except better and not dumb, when in Hyrule Castle. And you can have the same stuff. This time you actually use what Midna wanted to do, which was use Zelda's own magic to resurrect her after you defeat Zant and set Hyrule back to its place, right? Like, you can do the story basically beat for beat. If you just remove Ganondorf from the equation, you have a better story, in my opinion.
I think you're correct, Matt. I think that completely removing Ganondorf, or at least maybe having him be like the power given to Zant, like when he went through, he didn't have a body. Like, oh, dude, Voldemort the crud out of him. Yeah. So he doesn't have a body anymore. He needs to inhabit something to keep his power, and Zant accepts him in, and they kind of become one being together.
Yeah, like
it would have been awesome.
The Ganon from A Link Between Worlds who got fused with Yuga Ganon, like Zant Ganon.
Yeah.
Boom.
No, would have been freaking awesome. I did enjoy the final fight where he possesses Zelda's body. I thought that was a really cool part to the fight.
It was, but it was probably one of the biggest plot gaps of why is Zelda there? How did she get there? If Ganondorf resurrected her, for what purpose? Like,
Because
it doesn't
she just-
make any sense.
Yeah, because she just like Obi-Wan Kenobi'd out
when she healed
yeah.
Midna. So like it didn't make any sense that her body was
So
there.
we know they can't like technically die because they're
Sure she
holders of the
can.
Triforce, right?
Yeah, she can totally die.
Well, I mean, so you say that, but then Ganon, same thing. He got turned into a giant fire god in the other realm after he was killed. So it makes sense she's like floating somewhere in the goddessy ether, right? And also, he needed to possess her body. So I mean, what else do you need?
It was a neat moment. I'll definitely give you that. Let's start talking about a few specific elements of the story, and we can kind of start dovetailing here into our sub conversations about the important characters that are in this game. Let's go ahead and kick things off with our main companion character, which is Midna, because we're already talking so much about Midna and the stakes that character is operating under.
Isn't that a different part of the recap rundown?
Nope.
Where we talk about this version of Link, Zelda, and Ganon. I thought that was
that all happens in the plot, part one.
Oh, it does? Okay. For some reason, I thought that was a totally different section.
Nope. Yeah, so let's talk about Midna real quick. Mike, how do you feel about Midna as a companion character? Her stakes, her story, characterization, all those things.
I am pretty much all the way positive on Midna. From the very first, when she kind of comes in and she's that snarky little imp that you're like, I'm not sure how important she is.
She's a real kind of jerk.
She's kind of a jerk, but it's not so much her needing to be a jerk other than her just like not valuing you.
Yeah, and very obviously manipulating you to her own ends. Like, yeah, for sure.
But you go from that, and they did. I mean, that's what I'm saying. They put a 5 in her category.
Oh, easy.
I mean, they dumped it in there because you start very slowly to build that relationship with her, and that's very evident in the dialogue and her mannerisms until it feels very organic when near the end she's like ready to sacrifice herself for you. Like there's nothing in my head that's like, that feels forced.
Sure.
Like it's not like, okay, all of a sudden Anakin's bad.
Right.
I mean,
which only makes sense if you watch Clone Wars, the TV show, right? Yeah.
But so, no, I mean, she felt organic the whole way through. I loved her expressions and her characterization. I thought she was well animated, well done. And then at the very end, whenever she turns into her true form, and she kind of has that like
the Twilight Spider thing.
Yeah, and then that.
Oh no! Like
I'm
her
talking about
real
her
hot,
pretty
hot
form.
person. Hot person.
I mean, yeah, if you're into that.
I mean,
sounds like you're into that.
Yeah. A little bit.
Okay. Well, I mean, if Stephanie's allowed to be all in on Link, you're allowed to be all in on Midnight.
There you go. Thank you for your permission.
You're
I appreciate it. She's not as pretty as you, Mike.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate that. But no, I mean, even when she turns into that and they have kind of a moment, I thought that was really big. And then her going back into the mirror and her last act, I'm like, man, this all feels like it makes sense. I wasn't upset with anything on Midna's end.
Totally agree. I think it feels like Midna got 70% of the writing, animation, and characterization budget of the whole game. Like you were saying, Mike, just to put it in different words, it feels like Midna was the main focus of the whole game, which is funny because knowing what we know from Max's episode, one of them, where he said the only reason they added Midna was because you couldn't look at a wolf's butt running across Hyrule the whole time, so they had to give you a companion character. I mean, I'm sure they were working on a companion character anyway, but knowing that, it's kind of funny to feel that I think it is not controversial to say that Midna is probably the best companion character in all of Zelda. Like, I think she's the strongest. She has the most organic feeling growth of relationship. We talked a lot about it in the episode where we go and get the Master Sword, and how that episode was really a pivotal turning point for your kind of a focal point for the change in your relationship with Midna, and how she's grown on you and grown to care about you and also Hyrule and just everything in general. So, I think Midna is by far the strongest character in this whole game.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I really do think at this point, now having played it all, I agree with the assertion that Midna is probably the gold standard companion character, in all the games that we've played so far, at least, and probably for the rest of the series. I think there's so many ways that this character was done right. Great callback to that very emotional moment in the Sacred Grove episode, Matt, where you get a lot of fun characterization of Midna with a lot of emotional resonance and a lot of character growth. It's fun because I think there there are shades of obviously there are different plot points at play, but Midna gets some similarly effective stuff as King of Red Lions does at the end of Wind Waker in that middle chapter.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of keeps rolling from that point, right? And that's really great. It's very well done. And I do like how a lot of the gripes that we had around around the midpoint of the game, we were kind of having a hard time getting around the whole okay, well, the Fuse Shadow didn't really end up mattering at all, and why does Midna want this? And that felt like it was a story thread that went nowhere. And those things all lead to some really cool moments with Midna, showcasing her full power and being a fully realized character with a ton of agency in this game.
Mm-hmm.
I would honestly say that there could be a very convincing argument for Midna being the main character of Twilight Princess.
I think you should say that Midna is the main character of Twilight Princess. I not only is she the title character, but she also it's her story. It's about saving the Twilight Realm from Ganondorf and Zant, and by extension, saving Hyrule. Like Hyrule is only important to Zant because of Ganondorf, but the Twilight Realm still needs saving from him. And I think this is Midna's story, and I think the game works very well in that way.
And she was going to do it on her own until she stumbled on Link.
Yep.
And decided to use him. I think we're leaving one big point to her being the main character in this. Link would have made it over the first big jump without her.
That's for sure. He would have been stuck as a wolf.
He would have been a wolf in some pit for the entire
He would
rest
have
of the game.
been stuck in that cell unless he chewed off his own foot, which then he'd be a lame wolf. Lame as in gimpy.
An even worse wolf than the wolf we got.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Much worse. Yeah. A 3-footed wolf.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think when you really boil this story down to its what is it at its most essential elements? And I think at the end of the game, the story is mostly about these parallel worlds, Hyrule and the Twilight Realm, and restoring both of them so that they can both live harmoniously, parallel to each other, but separate forever. And I think that Midna's bit and the portrayal of that character and the journey that she goes on is one of the big reasons that narrative through line lands at the end as well as it does, right? There's a lot of other things that don't land, but if you're just looking at that through line, I think that is a success.
I think Midna's story lands, but I don't think that they built up the Twilight Realm. To your point earlier, I don't think they built up the Twilight Realm enough for the Twilight Realm storyline to land. They built up Midna enough for Midna's story as the ruler of Twilight to land. The hardships that she went through on behalf of her people, the hardships she went through to get back, the hardships she went through to save them. But I still don't feel like I care at all about the Twilight Realm at the end of the day outside of Midna.
So you're right, but there are some things that are done really well in the telling of the backstory of the Twilight Realm. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of fun moments, especially around the sages, the stuff that happens in the mirror chamber, right? We get a lot of fun history for the Twilight Realm as it existed before Midna,
where
right?
It's the Australia of Hyrule.
Right, where basically the Twilight Realm has been subject to some terrible things because of poor decisions that have been made in Hyrule, right?
Sure.
And so I do still think that at the end of the game, we have told a story in which those wrongs have been righted for both worlds, right?
Sure.
I think that could have been done better. I think you're absolutely right about that. But I do think it is there.
I would have liked to have had just one village in the Twilight Realm. Give me one livable space that looks like people inhabit it.
Twilight Realm's version of Castletown.
Not even that grand of a scale. If you just would have had a Kakariko village and just say, this is the village leading up to our castle now, they're not expected to be on the same par with the Hylians because they're kind of starting over from ground zero when they all got there. In my head, whenever you go through this rock that all these criminals are sent through and the peaceful Twilight are supposed to live on the other side, I'm like, where are the fortifications the Twilight are building to defend against the people when they first come through until they can kind of vet them? I would have loved to seen some kind of little Ellis Island for convicts.
Hey, here's how things work in the Twilight Realm. You're going to be peaceful and nice, and you're not going to do what you did in Hyrule to get you sent here. Cool. Glad we're on the same page. Yeah.
Just a little story building and a little village, and I would have been a happy man.
Agreed.
Mike, do you agree Midna's the best companion character in Zelda up until this point?
No, I think it's Linebeck. I'm just kidding. No, I would put her as probably my top, and then I think there's a strong case for Fee and King of Red Lions to be kind of my follow-up too.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
For me, they go in that order. It's Midna at the top, King of Red Lions at number 2, and Fee at number 3.
I would agree with that. Yes.
Okay, cool. Let's move on to a conversation about this game's, the actual main character of this game and the series as a whole. Let's talk about Twilight Princess's version of the hero himself, Link, the hero of Twilight.
Indeed. Other than being a big thirst trap for people of this era, which, credit where it's due. He is a big thirst trap. I think he's actually kind of interesting. He's got the classic thing about Link, which is he's a silent protagonist. He's a tabula rasa somewhat, where you can kind of imprint on him. But I think he's got a lot of emotional investment. I don't think his emotions are animated very well. He's pretty constantly stuck in a state of half smile, basically permanently, even when he probably shouldn't be in half smile. But I think it's really cool to see Link going about his daily life as a farmhand or a ranch hand, well respected in the community, well liked, and then he's kind of the protege of the town badass, and then kind of supersedes all of that, grows beyond his little farming village, and goes and becomes a hero and goes through the training with the previous hero. And I think he's got a really cool journey that is kind of more subtextual than overt. And I like it. I think he's a good Link. I don't think he's the best Link, but I think he's a good Link.
I would say he's a good Link to being near the best. I wouldn't say he's top, but he's definitely there.
I would say he's top 3 or 4.
Yeah, I think that's fair, Matt. My favorite thing with this Link is that, like they did this in Skyward Sword 2. You don't just wake up one day and all of a sudden start this quest. You didn't just have your uncle die in front of you and now you start this quest.
Yeah. And now you're diving into the Hyrule Castle dungeon fighting some rats.
Yeah.
Right.
No, it makes sense. That's the same thing kind of with Midna. It makes sense, his story. Mm-hmm. You're a farmhand. They characterize that really well with his outfit change. You're going through this. You have an affiliation with this town. You're not just kind of thrown here. You live here. It's a livable space. And you've got friends, which makes sense. Mm-hmm. If you've lived, what are we saying Link's age is in this game?
He's probably 16-ish.
16, 17, something
yeah,
like that.
I would say that's what I'm thinking too. And so, he's lived there for that long. He's got to have some story with the town for it to feel good to me. Mm-hmm. And you've got that. I think, unfortunately, that this Link kind of has the same emotional load issues because of the game he's around. I feel very invested in Link's quest up until you wrapping up the child's quest.
Yeah.
And you've saved the children at this point. Illy is kind of a loose thread that
hangs out way too long.
Yeah, you kind of end up I kind of forget she's even there. But I liked his exploration, his becoming the badass. I really love that this game had the ancient teacher kind of aspect.
Hero shade.
How does Link get from being farm boy to being badass number 1? Well, he's got a teacher that's the old hero.
Yeah.
And I know y'all probably talked about this on the episode I haven't gotten to listen to.
Yeah.
But man, I'm such a big fan of the characterization of the ancient hero.
Yeah.
And I don't know when the ancient hero decided to take off the tunic and the sleeping cap and go for full armor with horns.
But I love it.
I'm here for it.
It's awesome.
I wish you could get that armor toward the very end.
I wish the magic armor looked like that.
I know.
Man, that should have been an outfit in Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom.
Amen. I think everything you said is right on point, Mike, and what you said brought to mind one of the things I like most about the early characterization of Link is the way the younger children look up to him and the way he interacts with them, where he's kind of like their older cousin that they all are just obsessed with because he's so cool. And he's not mean or rude to the kids. He's always willing to mess around and play and show them tricks. And they're obviously super comfortable around their big brother figure. And he's loves that role and he's totally there for it. It feels very small town. And, we semi grew up in a small town. And so knowing how that feels and seeing the characterization done really well there was really, really cool. And I think one of the strongest selling points for the early story of this game.
Yeah, I think that Link as a character works best when you have him as a part of a community. at the start of a game, like you're talking about, Mike. When you portray him as having long-term relationships, and those relationships are a part of the game, and he feels like a part of this world just as much as every other character does, I think that's when Link can really kind of come alive. And yeah, you're totally right, Matt. His expressive quality is not here as much as I would like, especially comparing him against Wind Waker Link before this, and then Skyward Sword Link after this, right? He just does not have the same range of visible emotion, and I was kind of missing that for sure. But I do think that what you lose in that, you do really gain in the way that a lot of these characters interact with him. And it makes him feel very important in an immediate way, which is really great. He does, he feels like an important person to the people that he's saving. And that's really important. That's one of the reasons that I think Skyward Sword Link works so well, is because similarly, he's part of a community at the beginning of the game, and he has real feeling relationships with a lot of those people, right? I don't think this Link is as successful as Skyward Sword Link, just because Skyward Sword Link has got two major relationships from that early area
that carry the whole game.
That carry the whole entire game, right? With a few secondary ones that are honestly almost equally well done.
That get
right?
established late in the game or kind of middle in the game. The Impa relationship that gets established and then carried through. The Fledge relationship that kind of grows. Even the Master Gaepora relationship is kind of there. He's kind of an old mentor. But yeah, I agree, Lyndon.
Yeah. As a side note, I think that Link in this game has some of the coolest outfits throughout the whole course of the playtime.
Totally agree.
Farmhand Link is great. Sumo Wrestling Link is great. Hero's Clothes Link is awesome.
Love that outfit.
Yeah. And then of course, just talking about outfits you can acquire, the Zora armor, awesome.
Coolest Zora armor in the whole series.
Magic armor looks really cool.
Love the magic armor.
Yeah. So anyway, I think this Link has a lot going for him, and it's not that this category has got a lot of stiff competition outside of a few notable examples, right? Because Link tends to be underbaked in a lot of Zelda games in ways that are kind of equivalent to the way that Zelda is sometimes treated, right? There's not always a lot of effort put into making Link feel like a living, breathing character of the worlds that he's in. But in Twilight Princess, he definitely does. And so, I think a successful version of the character for sure.
Yes.
In terms of abilities, too. I mean, let's talk about that real quick.
Yeah, he's got some awesome combat abilities. And we talked a little bit with some of the other people where, especially if you're playing on normal mode, this game isn't exactly challenging from a combat perspective. Even on hero mode, it's not exactly challenging. And so if you're on normal mode, you don't even have to use most of the abilities, but just having them in your arsenal is really cool. And in hero mode, I used almost all of them very frequently. Helm Splitter and Side Roll definitely being the two most used. But, even the big jump slam and the large, more powerful whirlwind spin, both very helpful, useful abilities. Overall, I think this Link has the best suite of combat-based abilities of any of the Links.
I think that's pretty fair. And one thing I think this game did do well is, while it's not hard, it does throw enough different enemy types at you where I feel like I get to use each of those abilities if you want to. And I kind of forced myself to try and use them as much as I could. But I mean, there's mob enemies to use some of those on that work really effectively. They throw enough combat-centric enemies at you, like the Dark Nux and some of the Lizalfos, where you kind of have to get creative about what you're going to do to them. Like, I know I can't attack this guy straight on. And so I like that it gives you at least some opportunity to use the cool moves you learn.
I will say, I think this Link loses a few points just because of the quality of control that the character has.
Amen.
We've talked about Clunk a lot, in this season, and I think it does bear mentioning because it is a little bit less fun to play as this Link moment to moment. Just the fact that the controls of this game, I think, needed another pass to be fully polished. It had me feeling the whole game like this Link was about as graceful as I would be in Hyrule trying to do hero shit, right? Like,
and I want to feel more graceful than myself.
Just like kind of bumping into walls, falling off of stuff, like,
Donor, I know that you, much like myself, and most likely our compatriot Matt, spent enough time in the backyard playing with sticks.
Yes.
We could have done this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I could have run into walls myself. Yeah, absolutely.
I have a pretty mean spin attack with a foam sword. I'm just saying.
I know. I've seen you use it. It's terrifying.
Yeah, it's horrifying. Mike, no one should ever have you chasing them around a dorm building with a foam sword. As someone who's had that happen, it haunts my dreams.
You are a relentless combatant with a foam sword. There's no doubt about that.
Guys, those are some of the nicest things you ever said to me.
I meant it from the heart. I think that this might be the third most powerful version of Link that we ever play as.
Ooh,
wow. With number one being Tears of the Kingdom Link, who basically has command over reality itself, right?
For sure.
Via Rauru's hand and stuff. Second, I think, has got to be the battle mage Link of Zelda 2.
Well, I was about to say, like, it's hard to say that this Link is in the competition for most powerful because he has no magic abilities. Like, that's a huge handicap for him in the rank and the power ranking in general. Like, even Breath of the Wild Link sort of had magic from the perspective of the Sheikah Slate. So I think he loses a huge chunk of points in the fact that he doesn't have any magical abilities.
And it's hard in my head too, because I don't tend to equate the 2D Zelda Links to being super powerful. I don't know why that in my head, but I go and I think about all the different powers and items you get. I feel pretty much like an invincible boss by the end of middle to end of most of the 2D games. And so if you're putting that on the same platform, like, yeah, I mean, his arsenal of abilities isn't quite there. He does get some cool items though.
But I think he gets a couple good items. Most of them are not great in the comparison of other game items. Like, what are you going to do with your spinner against the hero of time? Nothing. Like, your spinner's not going to do anything for you. And if you want to talk about, like, sure, the ball and chain is pretty cool. But again, like, Hero of Time could just Din's fire you. And you're just like, okay. So, like, I think if you're looking purely at combat potential, I think 2D Links generally will win out because they get double upgrade sword, double upgrade armor, and then, generally speaking, like big spin attacks or something like that. So you got lots of overpowered abilities in the top-down Zeldas.
Yeah, maybe it's an apples to oranges conversation for sure. I'm willing to say that. Let's move on and talk about this game's incarnation of Zelda. This ought to take 2 minutes.
I mean, I think it could take more than 2 minutes just because you do get some backstory of Zelda being the actual ruler of all of Hyrule. Instead of like the princess to a absent king or a unnamed king, she is shown as the ruler of Hyrule, shown in battle. Obviously, she gets defeated in battle, but at least, she's got the sword and she's fighting. And then she sacrifices herself for Midna, and then she has light arrows at the end and helps you defeat Ganondorf, which is more than a lot of Zeldas can say.
I feel like all Zeldas do that, the light arrows at the end of the game thing.
Well, other than Tetra and, Zelda in Ocarina of Time gives you the light arrows, but doesn't help you beat Ganon until the end when she blasts him. So, like, I think Tetra is the only other one that does light arrows that I can think of.
I was thinking more just in terms of, like, conjuring light arrows for you to
but like, you get light arrows a lot.
All right.
So I will say on this, I'm not completely down on this Zelda.
I'm not either.
Yes, I agree with Lyndon. It's a short, but I feel like every moment we get with this Zelda is actually a pretty strong Zelda moment.
Agreed.
The melancholy you get from the first time you meet her, where she's lamenting what happened to her kingdom and that she wasn't strong enough to save it herself, to her sacrifice for Midna, and then her coming back and being the possessed body, regardless of how we get there. That was freaking cool.
Sure.
And she looks badass.
She does look really cool. Yeah.
And then you've got the very, very end where she's on the horse right there with you. I would have liked to have seen about 40% more.
Less horse, more Zelda. Yes.
I mean, I don't know. That Zelda's a terrible shot. I don't know if I could have. I don't know if I could have done 40% more of waiting for Zelda to shoot at Ganondorf.
Less horse, more Zelda, and I think we're at a good place. Yes,
I think we're also over here with Lyndon, his equestrian skills we didn't know anything about, and his ability to shoot a bow from horseback. Can you tell me more about your experience there, Lyndon?
How good are you at shooting a bow from horseback?
I politely decline to expound further.
He's good at an Ocarina of Time in the Gerudo Desert minigame.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the only place you need to be good at it.
That's true.
Yeah. Okay. No, I mean, my thing here is that I think that the beginning of the game teases you with a really cool Zelda, right? That first cutscene where you see Hyrule Castle overthrown by Zant and the Twilight, crazy cool moment. We get some hints at a really cool character in those interactions between yourself and Midna, right? Those are neat. And then at the very end of the game, you get some cool Zelda moments as well. But my thing is, she just shows up once or twice to be kind of cool and do some slightly cool things, but she's never developed as a character, really. She's absentee for the majority of the game. And we never get the impression of what is happening in the game. Let me take that from the beginning. We never get the same focus on the impact of the events of the game with Zelda as we do with Midna. And I think that that's really disappointing. I think that they both kind of could have been done, and they really weren't. Like, I agree with both of you. There's some fun to be had here, and it's not the worst incarnation of Zelda, that's for sure. But I think when it all, like, on balance, we're looking at another version of this character that was very undersold by the game she was in.
Agreed.
I agree. I will make one quick point of I think that they did not want to overshadow Midna with too much Zelda, but I think they might have leaned a little bit too much in that direction.
Yeah, no, I think that that's probably fair. Okay, so let's move on and talk about this game's incarnation of the Demon King himself, Ganondorf. We'll have a separate section for Zant here in just a second, as the big bad for the majority of the game. But Ganondorf is the actual final boss and one of the three main characters of the series as a whole. So we got to talk about him. I'm going to start this one off and say that as annoying as it is that we get Ganondorf in the way that we do, and as annoying as it is that comes at the expense of other characters, I do think that this version of Ganondorf is kind of a badass, right? His portrayal is really cool. We get some cool moments in cutscenes, especially like the mirror chamber one when he's executed by the sages, right? We get a lot of that fun emotiveness and characterization that I think the best versions of Ganondorf have, right? I think we used the word feral in that episode where that cutscene happened. And I think that that's just really great. I think if the goal is to show Ganondorf as he was in Ocarina of Time, but with a bit more edge and a bit cooler of a character in his portrayal, then I think that is fairly successful here. And I think that that's kind of capitalized on really well in the final boss fight, where we see a version of Ganondorf that is very powerful.
No, I agree. I think that the feral aspect's right on the money. I think that, at least what I'm drawing from in my headcanon again, is that he's been imprisoned for, I don't know if eons is the right word,
centuries,
but a long time with nothing to do. I mean, he's been a floating, massive
firehead,
evil fire cloud. He's bound to go like a little more insane, right? Like, it makes sense that he's more unhinged, more feral. And I think they're trying to lean into that animal motif in this game of, well, Link can become a wolf. Why can't Ganondorf have some more animalistic qualities? And I thought forcing you to do a wolf on bear pig,
dark beast,
fight was actually a really cool kind of culmination of the animal aspect, and really the last time we used the wolf version. But I think that was really cool to show the light beast versus the dark beast.
Mm-hmm. It really says something about this game's version of Link in his wolf form that we didn't even touch on that in the Link section.
Yeah. Look, let's just agree that Wolf Link kind of sucks. It's fine.
It was cool for me whenever I first played it.
Yes.
I love the fact that they branched out and tried to do something cool with it. I think with a little better execution that it could have been really cool. So I'm met on it as a whole, but I liked what they were trying to do.
I guess that's fair. My thoughts on Ganondorf in general kind of mirror y'all's. I think outside of the way we got him and what we sacrificed to have him as a character, putting that to one side, he is dangerous and powerful. And there's no doubt about that. And having him be more than just a dead man's volley followed by Ganon fight was fun. Having, 3 or 4 different phases of the fight was cool and was good. I think he's good.
I think he loses some points just because, as we said last week, his plan still makes no damn sense.
Right. Like the whole execution of his Grandmaster plan is totally sloppy. And that's a writing problem, not a Ganondorf problem. But I think they wrote him poorly in that aspect for sure.
Yeah. I'll take one of those as well, Matt.
So while we're on that topic with Ganondorf, is this supposed to be the final end to Ganondorf in this portion of the canon? Because it seems to me like it's a pretty definitive end.
Kind of unclear. The way that ends, and we talked about it again in the episode you haven't gotten to listen to, is it's very unclear what happens to Ganondorf. Like, he's dead, sort of, but he's just kind of standing in the middle of Hyrule Field when we walk away, and then who knows?
I think the big unanswered question that a lot of people were hoping Tears of the Kingdom was going to touch on was, did this version of Ganondorf get sealed underneath Hyrule Castle and then get resurrected in Tears of the Kingdom, and that's like the same version of the character? And I think people were wanting that because, one, it would have put a little bow on everything that happens with this version of Ganondorf, right? It would have helped the end of this game make a little bit more sense, and it also would have helped people to slot Tears of the Kingdom a bit more comfortably into the child timeline.
Yep.
Obviously none of that happened.
Seriously. Spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't finished Tears of the Kingdom.
Which is fine, because I think that Ganondorf in Tears of the Kingdom, now that I've beaten that game, has his own cool thing going on, and it's fine.
Amen.
But anyway, it's very unclear. I think for the moment we're supposed to assume that yes, the Ganondorf character that you meet in the child timeline in Ocarina of Time for the first time does meet his end here in Twilight Princess and does not continue past that point. That's my read on the character. Aside from the whole plot device of
the neck snap. Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say, aside from the whole curse of demise, like the evil king being reborn time and time again situation.
Sure.
What if this is the version that gets pulled out of this world and ends up on a Pokemon Stadium battle in Super Smash Brothers?
Oh, that's definitely what happens.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay, cool. Good. He lives on.
He lives on.
He's in Super Smash Bros. There you go.
Super Smash Bros. Is in the child timeline, confirmed. I love it. Okay, let's go ahead and talk now about the game's kind of actual big bad. Not really, but sort of, yeah. Zant, the bad guy that we spend the most of the game being concerned with. Mike, I'm going to let you go first. How do you feel that Zant worked as a character beginning to end, and are you happy with what happened there?
Not happy. No, so I will say that I loved Zant as the bad guy for the first 2/3 of this game. I thought they did a really good job making him creepy, giving him motives. His underlying motive is pretty explainable. Like, I want to be the ruler of the Twilight. I feel slighted. I don't feel like we're living up to our potential, so I'm taking that by force. He gets a dark god to help him do his thing. So he's a warlock, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And so little Zant Warlock is doing really cool stuff. And he's such a cool stoic character. And I thought that 180 they did with him in the final battle, where he just like devolves into an impotent screaming child, really just stole that from us. I don't know what other language to put it in other than that. Man, they just really stole a cool bad guy to make another bad guy possible.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that point, and I know that we've talked about that a little bit already, but I do just want to reiterate, yes, Zant, very cool character. I think there's something about the design of Zant that is so intriguing to me and so fun. I think a lot of that is just because we don't get side villains all that often, especially in like mainline 3D Zelda games, right? They pop in every now and again, but for the most part, it's usually Ganondorf, something like that. We definitely think of him as the big bad of the series for good reason. But when they do a side villain, I think that can be more interesting just because it's a change of pace, right? And Zant was definitely doing that, firing on all cylinders from the very beginning of the game. The design of the character, just from an artistic standpoint, such a cool looking character. Like, And the way that he was portrayed in cutscenes early in the game, so menacing, so powerful looking. Like you felt a palpable sense of danger anytime Zant was on the screen for the first, I would even say 3/4 of this game. And I loved that. Like I loved the promise of that. And I wanted such a better resolution for this character, which as we mentioned, 2 weeks ago and last week, would have been totally possible with all plot events still ending the way that they did. I think that the big betrayal for Zant was just in the complete shift to goofy villain right at the last minute, which wasn't even necessary, which is a real shame. Like I do think that's one of the reasons that he tends to fall out of the conversation of all-time great Zelda villains, is just because of the way it all wraps up, which is a shame because the potential was 100% there. And yeah, it's disappointing, but still, I will maintain this for the rest of my days. That's a long commitment, I know, but I think that Zant is one of the coolest designed characters in the whole Zelda series.
I don't have anything to add there. I think you guys covered it for the most part. Totally misused and dropped the ball at the end with Zant. Could have been awesome, ended up not being.
Yeah. Let's go around the table real quick and give a few awards for excellence in side characters. And Matt, I'm going to let you go first on that one.
It's got to go to Mallow. Mallow is probably the most interesting of the village children because he actually continues past the point where you save them in Kakariko Village.
And just to clarify, definitely, yes, pick a winner, but feel free to talk about more than one side character if you felt like there were multiple cool ones.
For sure. I think Mallow's great. Obviously, he's really funny, and he's got cool and interesting character motivations for a toddler, and the fact that he is just he's a business mogul by the end of the game is really fun.
Yeah, I was sitting in my armchair in my living room earlier today, and Sawyer was sitting on my lap, my 2.5-year-old son, and we were watching the Grinch together and talking about Christmas and what Santa Claus is bringing. And I had a small moment where I was thinking to myself, man, when Mallow was your age, he opened a store
and expanded into Hyrule Castletown and saved the unwashed masses from the grips of overinflated prices.
Yeah, predatory capitalism.
So throwing in a cute moment here for Mallow. So my kiddos have been involved in my playthroughs of the Zeldas. Mavis, my daughter, loves playing the Beetle and things like that. She loves to ride around on Epona too. Doesn't matter like what she's doing. She just wants to ride around. Finally got my son on board for this one, who my son is just 3 months behind your kiddo, Lyndon. And so we're playing, and I'm in there in the living room. My feet are up, and I go into Mallow Mart, and my boy likes to dance. And
I'm sure he loved the Mallow Mart
song. I look up, and he's just like twerking to the Mallow Mart song. I sat there in Mallow Mart for like 30 minutes while he just had the time of his life. And I was like, I don't want to leave. He's having fun.
He's having too much fun.
So I just sat there and basked in the Mallow music.
I love that for you. So Mallow's great. I think Yeto and Yetta are two other really great characters. I love the whole arc that happens around Snow Peak. And I love the end scene in the credits when you're kind of fading out from Snow Peak and the little heart comes out of the bedroom.
Yeah.
Good
for them.
I love them being happy. Like that's a happy ending for two characters that really deserved it. They're great.
To that point, yeah. I think so. Yeah, Yeto and Yetta are great. I think that there's a really fun thing that Zelda should do more often, which is tell the story of a character or characters through the course of going through a dungeon, right? I feel like a lot of times we meet NPCs or characters that kind of tee us up for a dungeon, and then while we're in the dungeon, it's just Link doing puzzle shit. And, the character themselves is not really involved with the happenings inside the dungeon experience. But I love that Yeto and Yetta are like that we have a tale that we're spinning for the entire time that we're in the dungeon trying to conquer it. I thought that was really great and something that could definitely stand to happen a little bit more often. I want to say, too, as far as side characters go, I need to come back around to who I thought was the best side character in the game. But I really do like all of the village children, the children of Ordon Village, Mallow and Tallow and Ilia and Colin. Like, I think that's a good group of side characters, and they do exactly what they need to do for half of the game, which is add a sense of emotional importance to your quest. And I think that they're all portrayed very well with their own specific personalities. And it's a very successful little group of people that we end up with. So Village Children are definitely one for me. Mike, how about you? Is anyone coming to mind?
Yep, I got two I want to mention. So my first one is going to be Fire. I think that he's a really cool characterization, and the fact that he comes in to help you a couple times, plus he just is like a funny little clown man who decides my business model is going to be going to the lake where there's very few people, putting up my cannon and just seeing what happens.
See who wants to get shot out of it.
Who wants to get shot out of a cannon?
Would you get shot out of a cannon, Mike?
If I saw someone else do it first and live, I might be so inclined. So my other one is going to be Agatha. Even though you don't get a whole lot out of her as far as like character development, I think she's just such a cool. I'm trying to think of the right word here.
Goofy, quirky.
Yeah, she's a goofy, quirky character. Spending all her money on bugs.
Whatever makes you happy,
but
man.
she's just so happy. That's it. I mean, that's the thing. Like, she is living her best life in her little like bachelorette pad with her bugs, and I really enjoy the just kind of weirdness of it.
Yeah.
My last one, and probably one of my favorites, is going to be the King Bulblin. So we get him. So I'm taking this as we fight him several times throughout the game, right?
Yes, he's the same guy every time.
Same guy. So not only does he have massive staying power, I mean, we throw this guy off 2 freaking bridges, and he's like, "I'm back." And then the final fight you get with him, where you're in. I mean, they're cool fights too. Like you fight him on pigback, you fight him hand to hand, and then you fight him at the end. And whenever he kind of concedes, and he's like, "Dude, I'm just in this because I'm here for the highest bidder. Whoever pays me, whoever's the strongest, I'm backing them. And man, you got the goods, so I'm gonna go ahead and just dip on out of here."
Here's a key to the castle. Have fun.
Yeah, dude. I think his motivations and his characterization is super cool. I mean, he is what a barbarian goblin king would be to me.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair.
I enjoyed him.
Yeah, I'm still trying to think about who my like top tier, like who wins the golden award for side characters in this game. And honestly, it probably does need to be Mallow just because of the lulls, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Honorable mention though, the whole Queen Rutella and Prince Rallis thing.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah.
I like Shad. Shad is cool. The whole White Lotus, I think, falls flat just because of the way they're handled. But Shad is a bro. The fact that he's just willing to give up his life's dream to let you do your thing was a pretty cool moment. Also, Telma.
Yeah.
Telma's really cool. I think Telma is one of the few characters that, and Max mentioned this in one of his episodes, it's cool to see side characters who have agency in the game and who affect Hyrule at large. And I think Telma is really a prime example of a good side character. She's like not even tertiary. She's like 4 or 5 levels removed at the end of the game. But yeah, I think Telma was cool and busty. So there you go.
No argument there. Yeah. Okay. Do we have anything else that we want to say? Final thoughts about the story, just the plot of Twilight Princess before we get out of this section. I guess let's boil it down to this. We'll go around the table, starting with Matt. Do you think that Twilight Princess was telling a good story?
I think mostly yes. The first half was really good, and it continued to be good through most of the second act, but it really fumbles hard at the end. And it fumbles hard in the motivations and execution of the grand evil scheme and the resolution of that. So I think for the most part, yes, but it really does not finish on a good note.
How about you, Mike?
Yeah, I'm going to say that overall, I think it's a pretty positive story for the game. I think the execution and the pacing is what was really wrong. I think if they would have kind of spaced out some of that emotional impetus throughout, then it would have felt a lot more organic to me on the story. Overall, I enjoyed the story. And even the end, we get the Zant treatment, but even the end I felt was strong. I think that the gameplay and the way it was paced does not live up to its story.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think story is good, execution is a little poor. I think at the end of the day, it raises a lot of questions that it sort of leaves hanging. I think I said this last week. It's a game that seems to feel very uncomfortable with giving us solid answers to a lot of questions. It likes to leave a lot of things ambiguous, and that is a point against it because I don't think it was 100% necessary. But overall, yeah, I do. I stand by what I said in an earlier episode of the season, which is that Twilight Princess is tentpole Zelda, right?
Absolutely.
It's one of the big marquee titles, and its story is good enough on that basis. It's just, obviously some things that definitely could have been done better.
Agreed.
All right, y'all. I think that brings us out of part 1. Let's go ahead and get into part 2, which is the best dungeon. And this is something This is something we've been talking a lot about this season, to the point where last episode you were on, Mike, we were in a spot where we were ready to upend all of our previously held beliefs about what was going to be the actual best dungeon of Twilight Princess. And we've had a few weeks since then to kind of let that observation sink in and to think back on it. But Mike, I'm going to let you go first. At the end of the day, what to you was the best dungeon in Twilight Princess, a game that has almost nothing but good dungeons?
So I think I'm still going to land on Arbiter's Ground being my favorite dungeon, including the boss. So if you put it all together, I'm going to say Arbiter's Ground. I think that the story behind the temple, super cool. Like the reasons for going there, the need to be there was important. It felt freaky. It felt ancient. You fight a friggin' really cool mini boss. You fight a really cool boss. The item wasn't the best, but I mean, for the purposes of the dungeon, it was cool. I really enjoyed Roller Coaster Link for the time you spent in that dungeon. The way they let you use the item within the dungeon, super well executed. So I'm going to go ahead and put my vote in for Arbiter's Ground, with my close second being Temple of Time.
How about you, Matt?
I'm going to have to agree that I think Arbiter's Grounds comes out on top. I think there are things that Snow Peak does better. I think some of the puzzles in Snow Peak are better. I think the characters that we meet in Snow Peak are great. I think the setting for Arbiter's Ground just makes it great right off the bat. The first 3/4 of that dungeon being just so scary and spooky and terrifying, and a good rehash homage to the Forest Temple, as well as the Spirit Temple and Shadow Temple, somehow all at the same time. The boss fight is super fun while tonally very odd from the rest of the dungeon, but it's just fun. Zant is kind of at almost his scariest when he resurrects the dragon. Getting that moment was great. Leading into, the mirror chamber, and Arbiter's Ground just has such a great setting and fun enemies and fun boss fight. I think Snow Peak is a close second just because it is such a well executed dungeon of puzzles, and has a cool item. The boss fight is also fun in Snow Peak. The one that I had the most, I think I had more fun in Temple of Time than I had in Snow Peak, but I think Snow Peak is a better dungeon. So I think I would have to rank it as Arbiter's Ground, Snow Peak, Temple of Time in that order, but all very close together. And Temple of Time mostly because of the fun factor, but it really gets a big knock because of the Armagoma fight being not good.
Yeah, that is really an unfortunate thing about Temple of Time. Honestly, I think we have a quorum here. Arbiter's Grounds is the best, having had some time to think about it. I love what you just said, Matt. Like it manages to be an effective combination of several different kinds of dungeon, and that's very impressive. Even though the spinner is not necessarily the most useful ongoing item in the series, it leads to a lot of really fun moments in that dungeon. And honestly, Arbiter's Grounds just feels massive. Like the amount of dungeon that you get in that dungeon is highly impressive.
Yeah.
And yeah, Star-Lord is great. I would actually say that I'm going to tie Temple of Time and Snow Peak for number 2. I agree with everything that you're saying, Matt. I think that Snow Peak as a story is much better told. And again, it has a much better boss fight than Temple of Time. But yeah, the sheer fun factor of Temple of Time is hard for me to ignore. Like,
smashing things with a giant statue is just fun. And yes, going back through the dungeon and blowing up every puzzle that you just did was really fun. I know that may not scratch the itch for some people. I know Josh had some pretty negative things to say about it, but like overall, it was just fun, right? Like it was, yeah. It made me giggle.
What do you feel like was the worst dungeon in the game? Going to you first, Mike.
Oh, so that's a little bit harder for me because I don't have as good of a recall on the first couple as I would like. I'm going to go ahead and say probably the Goron Mines is going to be my least favorite of the group. I can't even really tell you why. It just doesn't stick in my head nearly as well as the rest of the dungeons.
I think that's totally fair. Mine is probably City in the Sky. I found that dungeon to be mostly, it's heavy on friction. Everything that you have to do in City in the Sky is difficult. It feels kind of like a chore to move through that dungeon more so than any of the others. While I agree, I think Goron Mines is probably my second least favorite. For the point you made, it's just not memorable. The boss fight is not good. The mechanics are whatever. You move slowly through the entire dungeon because of the iron boots. But you do get the bow in that dungeon, which is awesome. So yeah, I think City in the Sky is my least favorite just because it feels like a slog. Like if I were to consider replaying Twilight Princess quickly after replaying it now, I would be dreading going back to the City in the Sky, honestly.
Yeah, City in the Sky is my favorite too for all those same reasons. At the end of the day, I felt like I just spent
Least favorite?
Oh yeah, least favorite. At the end of the day, I feel like I just spent about 20 to 30 minutes longer in that dungeon than I really wanted to be. And that was not helped at all by the fact that the design of the dungeon just forces you to go slow through the entire thing, which is unfortunate. And also, my point stands on the aesthetic of the dungeon, which is that I just don't feel like it was as well executed as like the Cradle of Uka civilization as it was portrayed to be, right?
Absolutely.
Also, just get rid of the Ukas because I hated them. Never bring back the nipple chicken ever. How hard would it have been to give us some Ritos? Please, just Ritos would have been a lot better.
Agreed. Yeah, the Uka, I feel like they were there for almost comedic effect, and it just didn't land, and they ended up being more creepy than anything else and like off-putting, and didn't like it. And also, how are they supposed to be some crazy, powerful civilization of magic and industry? They don't even have thumbs. It doesn't make sense. Anyway.
Real quick before we go any further into the episode, let's go ahead and do the thing that we have started doing in the last few seasons, which is to rank this game's final dungeon against other final dungeons in the Zelda series. Just as a reminder, the ranking as it stands right now is number 10, Phantom Hourglass, the Temple of the freaking Ocean King.
Gross.
Number 9, Link's Awakening, not even really a dungeon. Number 8, The Adventure of Link. Number 7, Ocarina of Time. Number 6, The Legend of Zelda. Number 5, Skyward Sword. Number 4, The Wind Waker. Number 3, A Link to the Past. Number 2, A Link Between Worlds. And number 1, Breath of the Wild. And just to get ahead of this whole line of discussion, I know we touched on it a little bit in the last few weeks, but we're talking about just Hyrule Castle here, right?
Yes.
We're not comboing with Twilight Palace.
Just Hyrule Castle, yes.
Okay, cool. Let's see. I'm gonna take a stab and say that Twilight Princess... Hyrule Castle should be maybe between The Legend of Zelda and Ocarina of Time. I think it's better than Ganon's Castle in Ocarina of Time. I don't know that it's as good as Spectacle Rock in The Legend of Zelda.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And as fun as the combat was in this version of Hyrule Castle, I really enjoyed fighting the two Dark Nuts, and I enjoyed fighting the two Dinalfos, however you pronounce it. I enjoyed some of it. There just isn't a lot to kind of elevate it, right? There's very few puzzles. There's like one or two. You do utilize a lot of the items. But the main spectacle of the final dungeon is the final fight with Ganon. And really outside of that, this version of Hyrule Castle just isn't super memorable. And I don't think it has a lot to offer that the other dungeons in this game specifically haven't already done and done way better.
Yeah, and I think it's tough because Ocarina of Time's pretty low on this list because that final dungeon is sort of just a mishmash of other dungeons in the game, right? Yeah. And that's kind of all that it is. And it doesn't have very much of its own aesthetic personality outside of that. I agree that Hyrule Castle is not the most exciting of final dungeons, but it does have a cool sense of place that I think puts it slightly ahead of Ocarina of Time.
It's got a really cool aesthetic.
But like the sheer complexity of Spectacle Rock and then all these other final dungeons that are past that. Hi, Gatsby.
He wanted to be part of the conversation.
Hi, Pup Deucer. What do you think is the best final dungeon in the game?
He says, I don't know.
He says, which one's got the most cubes?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we love you. Yeah, I mean, I think so everything in the top half of this list has got a bit more substance and a bit more complexity.
Yeah,
to it, right?
I think you're absolutely right about that.
Mike, I don't know. Where are you at with it?
I mean, I'd say I'm right about the same sweet spot. I mean, I love the final boss fight and the running out of the castle in Ocarina of Time, like the having to flee it before it collapses is really a cool part too. But the final fight in this version in Twilight Princess was really cool. And I love that between Midna kind of reprising her role and her power and taking down the castle, then you're forced to have the last little fight out there on the field. It's pretty cool to me. I don't remember enough about The Legend of Zelda to really kind of rank that anywhere. So I'm going to say that where y'all put it's fine.
It's fair.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, this is a weird little section, you know. It's fun kind of keeping track of it, but it's tough kind of remembering the ins and outs of a lot of these at this point, right?
Yeah, maybe we should probably refresh our memory on them every once in a while, or like watch a YouTube video or something.
Not a bad idea. Not a bad idea.
Whatever.
Totally agree. Let's move on to part 3, which is the best item in the game. This is one that I think is going to be a little difficult because, especially coming off of Phantom Hourglass, right?
Which had awesome items.
Awesome items. Twilight Princess, to me, feels like its suite of items at the end of the day has some that are neat, but none that are just balls to the wall excellent. So,
amen.
Yeah. Matt, I'm going to send this one to you first.
I'm going to have to go with the bow, and we do the bow a lot, and especially in 3D games. The bow is as good in many ways as the Ocarina of Time bow. It is a sniper rifle that has no drop off and basically infinite range, and you can pair it, and I think this is why it's the best item, is you can pair it with bombs or the hawk mask to turn it into even more of a sniper or an artillery cannon. And so I think in a suite of less than good items, the bow is a standout pick.
Mike, you're up.
I didn't want to do the same thing that you do, Matt, but that's what I want to say as well. Because of its versatility, being able to pair it with things was really cool. Turning it into a sniper and your cannon. Who needs a bazooka when you have your bomb arrows? And the fact that you could get different bombs, I think I'm going to say that bombs is probably one of my second favorites, just because of the versatility and the fact they gave you, pardon me, so many options. I like that you can trade between the water bombs. I don't really know why you go back to Rego bombs after water bombs anyway. But I only use the spider bombs like one time just so they're kind of cool. Like they run around and waddle off and do their thing, but it wasn't like a bomb chew or something where you could direct it really well. So the bow takes the cake for me.
Yeah, this is really tough. I mean, yes, the bow is great. I don't like it as much as the Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask bow, for sure, but it's fine. I'm tempted to give the nod to the iron boots, just because you can do way more stuff with the iron boots in this game than you can in any other game that they appear in, which I think is kind of neat. It's so tough because I think if we're talking about just the amount of fun that you're having using an item, when the spinner is used correctly, it's the spinner, right? when you've got a space that is set up for you to be doing roller coaster Link, that's just a great freaking time. But of course, we only really get that in one place.
Right.
Yeah. And then aside from that, I'm just thinking Gale Boomerang, It
was cool to put out fires with it.
Yeah, claw shots, it is cool having two of them and being able to solve puzzles going to one target and then going to others from there. That's neat, right? But I don't know that it had that X factor that I'm really looking for here. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't know. I guess I'm gonna say the bow just because it's the bow and it's great, but I think it's
okay to be a joiner, Lyndon.
Okay. The overall theme here is that the items in Twilight Princess, I think, are one of the areas where it falls flat just a little bit. And that's because even though we get a lot of cool ones, we don't get a lot of opportunities to use many of them.
Agreed.
Let's move on to part 4, which is best music, which...
Oh, man. That's actually got some competition.
Yeah, talk about one area where this game was actually really going on all cylinders for basically the entire time, which is impressive, especially when you remember that this is the last 3D Zelda title before we got full orchestration, right?
For sure.
We're still using digital composition here. I know one of the big ticket ones is going to be Midna's Lament. Midna's Lament is a crazy, crazy cool piece of music, and it gets a lot of play on top 10 best Zelda tunes YouTube videos. I do really, really enjoy it. I think, you know what? I'm actually going to have to go for the intro music, the title screen music. I think that Twilight Princess's title screen music is one of the best in the entire series, and it really sets an incredible tone for the game. It sets a much more melancholy tone than we usually get for intro music, and I appreciate that very much about it. But honestly, it also sets up that main kind of motif that repeats throughout the entire game. The main, ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum. Yeah. Which is nice. I like that musical consistency that the entire game has. And I couldn't call this the best piece of music, but just because it is so freaking fun, the Mallow Mart music is great.
Yeah, I'm actually going to totally agree with you, Lyndon. I have sat on the intro screen for, no joke, 5+ minutes, just letting it loop. The end of the intro music where you get the wolf link howl at the end that swells into the end and harmonizes together was truly, it still gives me goosebumps. The first time I heard it, I literally was like, whoa. And every time since then, I still get it. It's really, really phenomenal. Obviously, Midna's Lament is way up there. I think the Gerudo Desert kind of chanting thing that it's got going on is good as well. And then you have Wolf Link howling the Song of Healing, which, that's always going to get me personally as a Majora's Mask fan. But man, this game really just has fantastic music.
I really have nothing to add. I think you guys touched on all the big ones. I'm going to give my shout out to Mallow Mart music. It's one of those things you're only there for a very specific time, but it's always fire. And I love walking on with that. And then I too enjoyed the wolf howling. Once I figured out how to do the howling properly and didn't sit there for 30 minutes trying to howl a dang song, I really thought that was kind of cool that they threw that in as a characterization. And then the dual howling with the old hero's wolf, the gold wolf.
Yeah.
Those were really cool moments too. When you're kind of in that fantasy space zone, howling together was awesome.
Yeah, good call out for sure. And getting reprises of old Zelda music, Ocarina of Time songs and whatnot, always going to be a sucker for that. They can get me every time pulling that card. All right, let's get into part 5, which is the best bloopy trail. In a game that has a lot of, not necessarily side quests, but, it has a few good side quests. It has a freak ton of minigames.
But no archery minigame.
No archery minigame. Really,
which is a real crime.
'Tis a bummer. Yeah. Mike, do you have a favorite bloopy trail?
I really don't have a favorite that just jumps out at me. I played a lot of the mini games early on that I really found out I had to stop doing that if I wanted to keep track with this game. So I think that the mini games were strong. There were a lot of them, which I think were supposed to maybe fill your time a little bit more than what I put into them. I'm going to go ahead and give a shout out to the getting all the Okoko scrolls for Shad, which is kind of a main deal, I guess. So I can't necessarily say it's a bloopy trail. And I know it kind of felt forced, but just doing that as part of Shad's quest and him being so excited about it felt good for me.
Helping Shad feels
Helping
good.
Shad feels good. He's a real mensch.
Yeah,
Like,
I love Shad.
Other than that, I really don't have a whole lot of bloopy to talk about.
I mean, I really don't either. I think you could give a nod to the Malamart expansion, which is kind of the main bloopy trail of the game, right? But all that really is investing rupees, except for, I guess you have to help that one Goron by dumping some spring water on him, which that was more annoying than it was fun. So I don't really want to give any shout out to that at all. Sumo wrestling, which again is part of the main quest, but was cool. I think it was a neat little,
Just as an activity.
yeah, it was a neat world building thing. I liked it. I mean, I guess as for Bloopy Trail, it has to be the Malamart expansion because I can't really think of any besides like bug collecting, which that was not necessarily fun.
Yeah.
And the rest of it is all kind of mini games. Like the snowboarding mini game is fun. Yeah, I don't know. That's about it.
Yeah, I think there can't really be any competition here. Malamart is the main bloopy trail, like you said, Matt, and that probably does need to take top spot. As far as mini games go, I still had the most fun with the circus tent one in Castletown.
That was fun.
The claw shot.
The second round was really fun.
Yeah, the claw shot one where you have to collect the stars and you have to find the most efficient path between all the different chain walls to collect them as fast as possible. I could have used a third, more difficult version of that.
Yeah, totally.
And it would have been I would have done it just because it was a good time, you know. But yeah, it's weird. Like I think especially when you think about a lot of the character side quests that are in games like Wind Waker and Skyward Sword, I think that Twilight Princess really drops the ball there a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. All right, that brings us to the main event, y'all.
Yay, main event time.
Part 6, which is our final thoughts and ranking, where we rank The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess against every other game that we've played. And so the way that we do this is I'm going to start from the bottom of the list. I'm going to read out the title of the game. We're all going to raise hands.
No, it's verbal now.
We're doing both.
Oh, okay.
We're all going to raise hands, and if you feel like The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess is better than that game, then you say I and drop your hand. And then whenever we no longer have a majority, that's where Twilight Princess lands on the list.
Got it.
So, let's do this thing. Starting at the very bottom. Raise your hands, everybody. Is The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess better than The Adventure of Link?
Aye.
Yeah.
You haven't played it. You don't get to vote.
Okay. Oh, that's fair. But yeah, I mean, we have a majority anyway, so it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Is The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess better than Phantom Hourglass?
Aye.
Is The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess better than The Legend of Zelda?
Aye.
Is The Legend of Zelda better than... See, this is where this gets hard.
Agreed.
Is The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess better than A Link to the Past?
Aye.
Nay.
Nay.
And
It's not.
and there she lies. And so the reason this is difficult is now like we're beholden to the list as it stands right now.
Sure.
Right? Because the immediate next question would have been, is Twilight Princess better than A Link Between Worlds?
And I would say yes. I think. Maybe.
I'm not sure that I would.
Actually, let me rethink that. No, I actually don't think I would either.
I was going to put it between those two.
Yeah.
Okay. So the ranking as it now stands is number 11, The Adventure of Link. Number 10, Phantom Hourglass. Number 9, The Legend of Zelda. Number 8, Twilight Princess. Number 7, A Link to the Past. Number 6, A Link Between Worlds. Number 5, Link's Awakening. Number 4, The Wind Waker. Number 3, Skyward Sword. Number 2, Ocarina of Time. Number 1, Breath of the Wild. So here's the thing. It was never going to make it high enough up on the list to be in direct competition with the Wind Waker because again, we've got Worlds and A Link to the Past there, but also it was never going to beat out Link's Awakening, right?
No.
But the conversation this entire time, and when the game came out, right, has always been Twilight Princess versus Wind Waker. Like within the culture of these games, that's always been the conversation. So let's hash that out for a little bit here, because I know that the Wind Waker is one that we, at the end of the day, we're not necessarily underwhelmed by, but it didn't take the list by storm.
For sure.
The way that a lot of people were expecting it to, for a variety of reasons. Mike, I think you were more down on the Wind Waker than either Matt or I were. So I'm going to let you start first. Give me your thoughts on, like, ranking be damned. Do you feel like Twilight Princess should have beat that game out?
No, I actually would have put it underneath Wind Waker. So my reasoning for this is, while playing Wind Waker, which is a product of its time, and I did not play it with fast sale or anything additional this time than I did the very first time I played Wind Waker. Wind Waker, I think had a great story. It had really fun characters. I enjoyed the art style kind of after the fact. Like, getting into it, it didn't really take away anything for me, and I liked how expressive things were. The bad guy too, Ganon, throughout is so just good. Fire, and the end of the game, it is a well-crafted story game, well executed and well paced. Other than the sailing taking forever, I think that it was stronger. I will say that Twilight Princess had better dungeons for the most part for me.
I think that's inarguable.
Yeah. But on pretty much every point besides that, I'm going to give it to Wind Waker.
Yeah, no, I'm going to land exactly in that same camp, Mike. I think while Twilight Princess has probably the best, second best, maybe third best suite of dungeons in the entire series, I think everything else about this game really does not measure up to Wind Waker. The smoothness, the clunk that Twilight Princess has versus the smoothness that Wind Waker has, the pacing of the story, the feeling of the world in general. Twilight Princess feels empty and feels shallow, and it just doesn't. The overworld is not. It's not a character. We talk a lot in these rank and recap episodes about Hyrule as a character, and the Twilight Princess version of Hyrule doesn't even deserve that. Like, it's just not. It's not a character. It's empty. It's soulless. It's not great. And while the characters are fun, they're really only fun for the first half or so, besides Midna. And then after that, everything kind of falls off a cliff. And then, like I said a lot so far, is the whole story fumbles hard at the end and really brings it down, in my opinion. So yeah, there was no world where Twilight Princess was gonna beat Wind Waker, ranking be damned. Like, it's just no.
I think also, talking about the world itself, exploring Wind Waker was a lot more fun. You just felt like you were discovering new places, new islands. Most of them had something fun to do on each island. So much of Twilight Princess's overworld was wasted, in my opinion. Just vast land that I mean, I'm glad they gave you the horse early, because can you imagine playing this game without Epona? I would have probably just put it down early in the game.
So much of it is there to just walk through or ride through.
And a lot of the cool things you find early in the game exploring are things you can't do until you get 4 or 5 more dungeons in and come back to. So you find something kind of cool, like a statue. Oh man, what's the statue? I want to do something with it. Oh, well, wait till Act 4.
When you're 40 hours into the game and you've forgotten all about that statue.
Right. Yeah. So that's my other big gripe.
Yeah, I think what it really comes down to is the Wind Waker is a much more confident product. It knew what it wanted to be. It wanted to be Zelda as a vibes game. And as a piece of art, it achieved that and was very consistently quality the entire way through. Like, yeah, maybe the dungeons are not as imaginative as they are in Twilight Princess. I don't think there's any getting around that necessarily, but I do just think as a cohesive product, Wind Waker is just superior in basically every imaginable way. Whereas whereas Twilight Princess is basically just existing to riff off of something else.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Yeah, it's really just, we wanted to redo Ocarina of Time to get people back on board after they, for some reason, didn't like Wind Waker.
Yeah, it did not have the bold vision that the best Zelda games have.
Agreed, completely.
Yeah. Which is a shame because I do think that there is a lot of stuff to really love here. Like there's a really great game in here and a lot of good times to be had. But, we're grading on that Zelda curve. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Look, and like at the end of the day, it has an amazing suite of dungeons. And we've talked a lot about that's one of the number one reasons that Skyward Sword is ranked so high on our list is the dungeons are fantastic. Twilight Princess has dungeons that are arguably as good as Skyward Sword. I think overall you could say Skyward Sword and Twilight Princess have two of the best suites of dungeons in the series. And the fact that, Twilight Princess is now ranking 8th on our list compared to Skyward Sword as number 3 is wild. And it really just all comes down to the pacing of the game and the identity of the game were not solid enough or unique enough or well executed enough to put it above some of these other historic titles like A Link to the Past and A Link Between Worlds, which we loved for similar reasons, having good dungeons, a great overworld, good suite of items, like things like that. And, the dungeons alone can't elevate it beyond it's not more than the sum of its parts.
Yeah. Nope. That's an excellent way to put it, and I think a great point with which to end this installment of the Sacred Realms recap. It's been a very fun conversation. Honestly, it's going to be very interesting to see if Twilight Princess manages to maintain this ranking or if any of the upcoming top-down titles, well, I mean, obviously, we have Tears of the Kingdom and Majora's Mask coming up at some point soon. Right.
Yeah, those are definitely going to shake up our top 5.
Right.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I will just say I've played the first 30 or so minutes of Minish Cap within the last 2 or 3 days, and early experience is very positive. I really, really enjoying it so far. So gonna be interesting to see how this all shakes out at the end of things. But regardless, Matt and Mike, thank you very much for joining me in this conversation. Mike, we always love having you on for these.
Love being here, guys. This is fun.
Yeah. Are you excited to play Minish Cap? As excited as we are?
I am very excited. I've never played that game before. It's on a system that I can confidently play without annoying my wife. So all thumbs up from here.
That's a mega win in anybody's book. We try not to piss off Bryn.
We appreciate that.
Yeah. Oh, man. All right. Well, that's another season in the books, y'all.
Yay. 10 down. Like, at least 10 to go.
More than the majority of the way through this thing. Like, we've got way more games behind us than we have before us.
Well, now we're adding in Zelda likes, which...
Well, but we're just talking about the crux of the thing, right?
Yeah.
Like we have come a very, very long way, and I don't know. I don't. Maybe we need like an Uno reverse card at the very end of this thing, in which we say
Play them all backwards.
No, where we just say like, "Hey, Link to the Past, we're sorry we did you dirty,
and we're gonna move you up a bit."
Yeah.
I mean, I think we have talked about once we're done with all the mainline games, we're gonna come back into our own personal rankings after the fact.
Yeah.
So we'll have some opportunity to give A Link to the Past some justice,
which is sorely needs. Man, I don't know what we
feel
were
bad about that.
I don't know what we were thinking at the time. Anyway, great episode, y'all. We will, of course, be back next week to talk about a brand new Zelda game, Minish Cap. Matt, that one's going to be just you and I. We tend to do first episodes of new games solo. That season's going to be very interesting. I posted the schedule to social media channels and to the Discord the other day, and it's a much shorter season.
Mm-hmm.
I think, what did we end up at? 6 or 7 episodes?
That's like 7 episodes total.
Episodes, yeah. So it's not going to be a very, very long one, but regardless, it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about, I think. Getting back to a quality top-down Zelda is an idea that sounds really great right about now.
Amen.
So, all right, y'all. If you enjoyed today's show and you'd like a little extra Sacred Realms in your life, you can head over to patreon.com/Sacred Realms Pod and become a patron. If you've got no rupees, it's not a problem. 5-star Apple Podcast reviews are a great free way to support us. More reviews means that more people see our show. That makes us very happy Hylians. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram for updates on the podcast and for behind-the-scenes action. Sacred Realms will be back next Wednesday with our thoughts on the game intro and the first dungeon of The Legend of Zelda, The Minish Cap. We'd love for you to play along with us and to share your thoughts on our social channels. The Minish Cap can be played in its original form on the Nintendo Game Boy Advance. If you were lucky enough to be a part of the Ambassadors program on the Nintendo 3DS back in the day, then you might have it on a 3DS system. Otherwise, your best bet is to play it on the Nintendo Switch online subscription as part of the Game Boy Advance suite of titles that it has, and that's going to be the version that Matt and Mike and I are all playing. None of those versions are any different from any of the others, so it's completely down to whichever one you can most easily access. But in the meantime, may your hearts be full, may your arrows never miss. We'll catch y'all next time. Sacred Realms is an independent, listener-supported podcast, which is produced, edited, and mixed by me, Lyndon Willoughby. Business operations are handled by Matt Willoughby. Our music is generously provided by Darknuck and is available to listen to on Spotify. Finally, we'd like to thank Nintendo for continuing to create such exceptional and innovative experiences.